What's going on? What's going on? Listen, I am back again with my guy, my brother from another mother, my Mountaineer brother, Brad Metheny. Last week, we had such a good topic, and it was so much information being shared. And it was incredible that I decided to ask Brad to come back on for part two.
Enjoyed it.
And I appreciate you, my guy. I appreciate you. I want you, if you get into some of the stories with some of the athletes that you had to work with over the years. And basically, you know how it go to naysayers. They don't believe nothing until it happens, right?
Right.
After the fact, about guys that no one really thought had an opportunity and they wound up playing in the league.
Well, probably my biggest success story, I sort of touched on it last time, was a young man, Demetrius Cherry, when I was a head coach at Frostproof. And Demetrius come walking in at during practice, walked across the field and said, "Coach, I want to play football." And he was about 6'5", 270, a 10th grader. And I'm like, wow, all right, we'd love to have you, but how's your grades? And he said, "Well, Coach," he said, that's where we got to work on. And we did everything we could do to get him eligible that year. He took summer school. He took online classes. He repeated the classes that he had made D's and F's in, and came down to an online class in Orlando that he was taking, that he had to have an A and ended up with an 88B. So he ended up with a 1.98, and he had to have a 2.0 to play. And he's like, "Coach, I'm just going to quit school." And he said, "And go to work." And I said, "No, you're not." I said, "You're going to practice." He said, "What?" He said, "I can't play." And I said, "No, you can't play, but you can practice." I said, "We're going to work on your skills and get you ready for winter basketball. And, then you'll have your senior year left to play," which he did. Lost about 40 pounds, got down to 240 and got into great shape, played basketball that winter and came out, had a really good senior year. Went to prep school from there, and then to junior college for 2 years, and ended up being the number 6 defensive tackle in the country coming out that year.
Wow.
Signed at Arizona State, played 3 years at Arizona State. And like I said, got a chance to play in the league, was on 2 different practice squads and that kind of stuff. So that was probably my biggest success story of a kid coming from, really nowhere and no one given a chance to having a very successful collegiate career, and then getting an opportunity to play at that elite level.
Wow. I want to talk to you about this, Brad, because this really, it grinds my gears when I think about this. How many kids are missed because either, I'm just going to call it what it is, either you have personal agendas, someone doesn't like this person or whatever, and the poor kid is left in the weight, left in the balance, or people really don't know what they're looking at. So you're put in position and you think, oh, yeah, well, you're listening to these individuals and they really don't have a clue as to what they're looking at. How many guys have you had that you kind of was like, wait a second, I'm telling you, if you just look at this guy, I'm trying to tell you, how many guys have you had?
Yeah, quite a few that, again, on all the rubrics and everything that they do, stereotyping positions by, height and weight, and they've got to be this height or this weight and this 40 time. There's nothing out there that measures the heart and the determination. I had an offensive lineman early when I was coaching in the late 90s, early 2000, was a 2-time state discus kid, threw a discus 198 feet. He was 6'2", 285 pounds, coming out of high school, benching 4 1/4, wore a size 17 shoe. And I couldn't get a Division I school to look at him because, coach, he's not really 6'2", he's 6'1 3/8. And, he's got to be 6'2". And I always question what happened to low man wins and leverage and power and explosion. So you're telling me you wouldn't have recruited Warren Sapp or John Randall or people like that? London Fletcher at a 5'8", 5'9" linebacker, but it was 240 and led the league in tackles 2 years in a row. So there's always players out there. I had a young man that made it to the league in practice squad, Lamar Miles, coming out of high school. He was a pause bench 485 kid, clean and jerked 385, ran 4.5, but he was 5'11", 208 pounds coming out of high school. He's just not big enough, coach. Well, he went on and played at Louisville for 3 years and led their team in tackles for 2 at 5'11", 235. So, we've had a few. We think, man, boy, they're missing on this guy because of, the intangibles that we see every day in practice. But, again, they look statistically at numbers and some different things, and we can't do that. And assistant coaches have told me many times, Coach, I'd get fired if I take that kid back and put it in front of my head coach. He won some 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" at guard and 6'5" to 6'8" at tackle, and at defensive end, they've got to be, a certain physique, and so they look, every recruiter has their things that they look at. I'll never forget Kurlav saying, I want them pigeon-toed or bow-legged, and the big bubble butt, and that way I know they're going to come off the ball with something behind them. Right. So everybody has their preferences, and we think as coaches they missed on this guy, but they're pretty good, because when you get to that next level after collegiate, it's a pretty special player.
Well, here's what's funny, right? So the reason why I preface it that way when I say the so-called experts, because those are the same guys 2 or 3 years later that fired anyway.
Correct.
The same exact guys, right? So you may have a guy that probably would have helped you keep your job had you, because here's the thing. It also comes down to knowing who is coaching and who's evaluating that guy prior to that scout coming in. Right. You're not going to you personally are not going to stamp somebody. They have to really be able to play. They have to have the goods. I'm that way. I'm not going to look at a kid and say, well, because I like your dad, I'm going to scout you and say you're this, that. No. Right. If I pick up the phone and say, this kid has it, the kid has it.
Yeah. Well, you got to be honest with yourself. And like you said, the GMs at the NFL level and at that highest level, they're banking everything on that the first player and that lottery pick type guy that they're taking and rolling all the dice in there. And he may be not even being on the field for the next 2 years until he's ready and groomed to be able to fit that position of what they're wanting him to be. And like you said, that staff, that GM, all those people may not even be there to ever see him play. Again, it's got to be a fit for that system, that program, that offensive or defensive philosophy. But there's a lot of guys I think that could have played, that missed, and there's some guys that you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And there was a couple first round picks this year that I just, I questioned. If I'm in that general manager seat and I'm drafting that guy, am I ever going to see that guy play? Because if you don't and you miss, it's impactful to you and the program and everybody else. So it's a tough decision. And like you said, they've all got their metrics and what they weigh it out on and how they come to that conclusion. But sometimes it's questionable.
I'm going to say this. I remember the staff at North Carolina some years ago. And I'll never forget, it was one of the best staffs that when it comes to projecting out, right, 3 to 4 years out, they would bring a kid in maybe their top junior day or senior day. They're looking at the body type right then and there, and they're projecting, we can get this kid in here. We're going to put him, in a good weight program. We're going to put him in a good, we're going to feed him, whatever the case may be. And he should be this, or this. If he listens and he does what he's supposed to do. And I'm going to tell you, they had more guys go to the league in those short recruiting classes that I've seen, because they wasn't there that long. And I could understand why, because they're projecting not what you can do for that college program. They're projecting you as a pro coming in at a high school. And what was interesting about that, the killing part about that, Brad, was a lot of those guys were NFL coaches already. So they had a different eye for what they were looking for. And they would take a kid, might be 2 inches too short for somebody else, but they understood the explosion of that kid. They understood the quick turnaround, fast twitch, all those things that another program, he got to be 6'2". No, know what? We're gonna take him at 5'11".
Yeah.
I see exactly what that got. So I was just amazed at how they would look at their board and they would scout out, we want this guy, this guy, this guy. I don't necessarily know if you come here, you may have to play this because your arms might be a little bit too short. So for a lineman, if we put you on the outside as an offensive tackle, you might not be able to punch drive because your arm just, I need your arm to be a little bit long, because when you lead hinge and you put that arm out, I need the guy to run the gauntlet to get to my quarterback. I'm going to put you at guard. We're going to put you at guard versus tackle.
And what you're saying, I think the coaching staff that was at West Virginia when you and I came through did a great job at that, projecting, number one, but also taking kids that, players that weren't really a 4 or 5 star guy. They took the 2 and 3 star guy and redshirted him, developed him, did a great job in the strength and conditioning room. And you look at that group. Rich Bram comes to mind, was an invited walk-on. I was sent to University High to watch him play basketball, me and Steve Dunlap, and came back and said, Donnie, you can get him for nothing. I mean, he wants to come to Morgantown. Spent that spring, came early and spent in the spring as a tight end, and boom, he grew in size and put the mass on that he was going to do through the weight room program anyway, and ends up being a 3.5-year starter at left tackle. Goes to the league and plays 12 years or something at Garden Center. So you go down the list. I mean, Bo and Ronaldo and Kevin Koken and Stroya and all those guys at least got tryouts. Granis and Calvin and Reggie and you just go down the list. Bo Orlando and I just AB Undra, all of you got a shot. And, I think that staff did a really good job of taking guys and sort of putting that puzzle together as far as a chemistry, as far as projections of what they could be. We had 3 running backs that went on and played some type at the next level. You had 4 or 5 wide receivers in that 2-year run. You had 2 quarterbacks. You had, 2 in the secondary with Al Voigt and Bo. Basil Proctor, Ronaldo. I mean, you go down the line, Chris Parker, Stroya and Koken and Kovac and all those guys, Milt Redwine, all those guys at least got a shot and a look at either on a practice squad or making a roster.
Yeah, when you look at that, and it's funny, I was going to come back to that because you're 100% right, Brad, and those are great points. I've always said, Coach Nealon and that staff, the key word that you said prior to everything else was develop. The development process back then at WVU was so different because they knew exactly what they were looking at. They knew what they were recruiting. But I'm going to say this to you, which is funny. I've always said, when you recruit character, you win. When you recruit character, you win. Character wins. And people look at me like, why do you say that? Because a kid that has character is not going to be in jail. You're not going to be chasing him around campus trying to find out what he's doing.
Right.
He's not going to be so problematic to your program that you have to make a tough decision within 2 or 3 years about his character because he's doing stuff off the field and you may have to get rid of him anyway. So for me, Coach did such a tremendous job of recruiting character along with the skill. And then for guys who had to be richer, they came in there, and like you said, you developed the skill.
Right. And that's a big coaching point that I have with the teams that I've been fortunate enough to coach and run. Is one of the biggest teaching points I make to them is, hey, you got to trust your teammates. You got to trust your coaches. They're going to call the call to put you in the right place at the right time. And then you got to trust that guy to the right and left of you, in front of you, or behind you, and know that he's going to take care of his job. So when you take care of yours, on the defensive side of the ball, that funneled in between us, and one of us is going to be on the ball. We're going to have a triangle on the ball. We're going to be successful, because I know I can trust that you're going to do your job, and the guy out here is going to do his job. And so same thing on the offensive philosophy. If you trust each other, running back, hey, when we're running zone, you got front sides A, B, or C gap to backside A gap. Somebody's going to get that block to give you that hole. You got to see it. The lineman got to trust that he's going to see it. You got to trust that it's going to be there, and then recognize it and explode through it. And so it's all those kind of things that we talk about and try to preach. But like you said, going back to the years that you and I were at WVU, I think that was huge as far as the trust factor and the character factor. We had a bunch of guys that cared about each other and cared about what we were trying to do, and we had one goal, and all of us were shooting to go in that direction to accomplish that.
Absolutely. And I love it. I love it. I think back on those days, man, more than any other time. Those were really, really pivotal learning experiences for all of us.
Yeah.
And you look on it now, and I tell Coach Neal on this, look, he has to be proud of the men that we became because of the different career choices after playing ball. There's a lot of us that are successful because of the foundation of what we got from WVU.
Well, I do. I reminisce on that as far as the teammates all the time. But you look at the group of coaches when I was there, Eugene, just the 4 years that I was there as a student assistant, GA, and the computer stuff. I mean, I worked with Rich Rodriguez, Paul Christ, Todd Fitch, who's been Holtz's offensive coordinator, Bill Legg, Dwayne Brown, Chris Herring, who's in the collegiate, David Lockwood, I mean, Tom Madera, who's been very successful in both college and high school.
Yeah.
Mike Dawson and I were the defensive GAs who ended up being high school coaches. But you take that group of GAs just in that little 4-year run that Coach Nealon had under his and the staff's tutelage. I mean, we've made out pretty good, and still make contact with each other. I keep in contact with Dawson and Coach Madera, and Tommy Madera, and that group of guys were even close as graduate assistants.
Absolutely.
So it was a good group of guys.
And you look at that, and that's something that I'm hoping and praying, and that's why I'm so glad you're in the position that you're in, because if there's nobody to funnel that down, each one teach one. Is if there's nobody left to teach that foundation, where does it come from?
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why that's why I wanted you back on for part 2, because this is important. Like, this stuff right here is important, because if you don't give it and people don't hear it, you know what I mean? Like, where does it go? You don't have an opportunity for these younger coaches, and not a knock on the younger coaches, but if you don't have that experience and you don't have that foundation, you can't teach what you don't have.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Correct. So for you to still be in that position 30 plus years and still doing this thing, and then you're able to send these young people off with the roots of how you were taught, that speaks volumes, because they're going to be probably more prepared than maybe the next guy who didn't come from this foundation. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, like you said in part 1, the things that we walked away from with our tenure at WVU is more so than just football. Like you said, the philosophies and the desire to, like I said, I'll never forget. I missed one meeting, and that was the last one and only time. I learned my lesson real quick. If he said 7:00, I was there at 6:45. And again, I tell our kids all the time, hey, that's based off my watch. So if I say 7:00, I may be 5 minutes fast. You better be there at 6:50. And I see that with Coach Sanders at Colorado saying the same thing. He's a little old school, and what we call old school, and trying to send that message. But just the work ethic, putting time in, being prepared, being on time, trusting your teammates and the guys you got with you on your staff. It's a lot of fun, and it's helped me throughout since I left West Virginia.
Absolutely. No, I look at that all the time. You're 100% right. I remember missing a class. I missed a class and had to get up. And this is a funny story. I missed the class, had to get up and run the stadium stairs. Coach Stanley goes, no, no, no. He loves running. He does that after practice. Make him do everything else other than run, right?
Yeah, you were a road runner. You were a machine running. So,
He touch up steps after practice. We're not doing that. Make
yeah.
him do sit-ups and push-ups and all that stuff. But it's like you said, I remembered, no, if you don't go to class, then you're not going to practice with the team, not going to eat with the team, no training table. You have to go to class. That's something that it's that moral code and that discipline that helps you it propels you to do everything else that you need to do in life the right way.
Well,
There's no cheat code if you want to be successful.
correct. It's the perspective. This is the right way. And I worked with a guy, Bob Irwin, who he said, "Draw the line." It's the standard to be above the line. That's what's to be expected, and that's where we grew up. Hey, we knew what was expected, and we had to do that and then some. So, and again, we were at West Virginia, and we knew, hey, if it says you got to do this 10 times to get better, we had to push to do it 15. And that was sort of the code of ethics that we grew up with, to push ourselves to the limit, to continue to get better and get over that hump. And I was thinking about it today, thinking, okay, what's Eugene going to ask me? But I said to myself out loud driving home, I said, you know what? I said, that Penn State game in '88, I don't know that a football team could have played a better first half. I mean, we were hitting on all cylinders. I mean, we scored more points in that first half than we'd scored against Penn State in probably the last 6 years combined.
Right.
But we came out and played the perfect half. And again, I think I contribute that to preparation and believing in what we were going to do that year, and everybody having the same mindset and believing that's what we were going to accomplish.
Absolutely. And that team that year, and even leading up to that, because if you remember, a lot of when AB and I first transferred in, people didn't understand that '86 team was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the record didn't depict that, didn't show that, but we knew that.
Right.
So it was those bricks and pieces that coach and that staff put together that led into '88. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
and it's not being cocky, but we knew what we had.
Yeah, it was a special group, and we knew it. And like you said, we just had that mindset that all of us were pulling the rope in the same direction, and we were gonna find a way to get it done. And again, I broke down all those 12 or 13 games leading up to the Fiesta Bowl when we were, and in my opinion, we were the better team, no doubt about it. If we don't have the injury on the third play of the game, and it took us till halftime mentally to believe, okay, we can still win this thing. And
Sure.
it was just a shell shock to everybody when everybody knew Major was hurt. And but again, you got to give them credit, and that's the game. But
Credit.
like I said,
I give that much credit.
yeah, a little bit. It was
Okay.
special, and I wouldn't root for Notre Dame against anybody except for when they play Pitt or Penn State. So
Yeah. Listen, I spoke to Tony Rice a few years ago, and we were laughing. And I said to him, I said, now you do realize, let's be clear. If number 9 didn't get hurt, I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say. I said, with a healthy number 9, we would play you guys any place, anywhere in the country. We would play you in Kroger's parking lot, right? 8 out of 10. He said, okay, all right. But he left because he knew.
Oh, coach, and he played the best game in 13 games against us. I mean, he couldn't hit. He was not very, he was not very high percentage wise as a quarterback. And like I said, I broke all those games down, and I just knew. But he played well that day. So again,
Look,
hats off to them. But I think it's a different ball game if number 9 doesn't get hurt.
absolutely.
I'll take
Listen,
that
man,
one to my grave, man. Believe in that.
you and all, I think all of us, because that's something. Let me ask you this before I let you go, Brad. In your philosophy when it comes to dealing with young people now
Mhm.
and what you know now, how important is it to get them to buy into taking care of their bodies? You know, these kids are putting all this junk in
It's
their body.
it's just as important as it was back when we were, but it's a lot harder because they've got all the side distractions with all the gaming on their phones, all everything being technical now, and they don't get sleep. I mean, I'll get
Yeah,
text messages from kids, and I'll get up in the morning and I'll look at the text message, and it was sent at 3:25 a.m. I'm like, what in the world are you doing up at 3:25 a.m.? I got one today. We had first day summer workouts today. I get a text message when I wake up. I get a text message and it was sent to me at 5:29 a.m. I said, Christian, what are you doing up at 5:29? It's summer, workouts start at 8. You don't have to be at the school till 7:30. What are you doing texting me at 5:30? I'm the old man. I got to get some sleep. But
right,
that part of it. And again, we stress more now than we did 20 years ago. Hey, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Maybe because we're in Florida and it's the heat, but we tell them all the time, hey, you got to eat the right things, you got to put the right stuff in your body. If you're going to do anything, make sure you get your protein, make sure you get your water, get your Gatorade, stay off the sodas, that kind of stuff. And it's really important because, to be honest with you, Eugene, you can see it. You can see it when some of these young kids aren't getting sleep, or there's situations going at home. I mean, you can tell in their demeanors, their body language, and then just their effort at practice. If they're really dragging, you pull them aside. Hey, what's going on? Why are you dragging today? Well, I was up all night, coach, whatever. So it is important. And we try to do a better job of, telling them what to eat, supplying that. We get it after workouts. We got our kind of, we had a special person give us a bunch of protein on a donation, and had another coach that's company went out of business and they donated a pallet full of energy drinks and that kind of stuff. So, we'll pass that out to kids every day after workout until it's gone, and try to get them, coach, during the off season, I'm making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on my planning period to give kids to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches just so they have something to eat. Because a
right.
lot of them just refuse to eat cafeteria food. I don't know why. I grew up on it, loved it, but they
Yeah.
won't eat it. And then they come to practice and it's like, coach, I'm hungry. I'm starving. So I'm making, 15, 20, 25 sandwiches to pass out to football players in between workouts and after school or before practice or whatever. So it's important, but I think staff wise, we do a better job than we ever probably did 20 years ago. But it's needed. Again, 20, 25 years ago, most of us had, if we were lucky, had two parents at home making sure we were fed and taken care of. And some of these kids don't have that situation. So you got to acknowledge it and try to help them get through as best they can with the proper nutrition and protein. I was fortunate at the one school I was at, the cafeteria ladies would let me take anything that, you had to take a full tray because
Right.
the government says that's what you have to take. So any kids that they weren't going to drink their milk, or they weren't going to eat their pudding or whatever, their fruit cup, they put it in a cooler, and then she'd roll the cooler down, and the football players would eat it before after school, in between school and practice. So, again, you just got to try to manufacture any way you can. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of people help and work with us to try to help the kids out, but it's vitally important.
Wow. Listen, man, Brad, I appreciate you, buddy. And one of these days I got to make my way down to the Florida,
Come down to Florida and watch a game.
come check you out. But I really do appreciate you, and listen, good luck with all with the summer conditioning and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And I'll be back in touch with you. You know that.
Sounds great. Once a
All right.
mountaineer, always a mountaineer. Love you guys.
So you already know. Love you as well, my guy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace
All right,
out.
Brad.
See ya. All right. Take care.